Hey Bullets YouTube channel.
Hurry up, now tell us why you're here.
After the Florida 500, Tex Dynaco would buy Team Rusty's from Sterling after they had a drive and talked. I wonder what this will mean now that Tex Dynaco is the CEO of Dynaco and also owns Rusty's. And now, Cruz Ramirez has this new look, both with the Dynaco sponsorship and with the number 51, the same number as the Hudson Hornet. Speaking about Hudson Hornet inspired redesigns, Lightning McQueen now has this as his look, and Lightning McQueen is now a part-time racer and Cruz Ramirez's crew chief. And Vinny Carsfan II has this song to sing, and Matt Karzith will be retiring from Piston Cup racing just before this race. And Matt Karzith had this to say after his retirement. And Donald Rodriguez is also a new rookie for this season. I forgot to mention him in the update video. And this is Abdel Martinez's correct look. There's yet another rookie, Matt Drift Benedetto, in the number 83. But qualifying, so he won't be in this race. Jackson Storm will still start at pole position with Martin Carx Jr. to his outside. Row 2 has Ryan inside Laney and Brad Karslowski to his outside. Now on to row 3, where Kyle Carson will be starting alongside Gogo Logano to his outside. Now on to row 4, where Cruz Ramirez will start her first race with Bubba Wheelhouse to her outside. Now on to row 5, where Rowdy Revan Bush will start alongside J.D. McPillar. I wonder how they'll do this race. Row 6 has Danny Suarez and Chase Racelot starting in the same row. Now on to row 7, where H.J. Hollis will be starting alongside Chris Roman to his outside. I wonder how they'll do this race. Row 8 has Denny Carlin starting alongside Aaron Clocker. I also wonder how they'll do this race. Row 9 has Kurt Busch-Tire and Flipped Over, both of whom hoped they would qualify better this race. Row 10 has Kevin Carvick hoping to do better this race and James Garrison to his outside. Now on to row 11, where Pitbull Speed Racer will be starting alongside JP Drive, who also hope to do better in qualifying. Row 12 has Herb Kerbler and Billy Carjoy, who is finally back. Row 13 has Vinny Carsfan II in his very first race, starting alongside Nick Shift. Row 14 has Paul Conrev starting alongside Dan Garcia to his outside. Now on to row 15, where Ed Trunkin and Cam Spinner will start, both hoping to do better this race. Row 16 has Harvey Rodcap and Michael Roeder starting to his outside. Now on to row 17, where another racer is making his debut. Daryl Speedy will be starting his very first race with Barry DePedal to his outside. Row 18 has Ryan Newcar and Arthur Carstro, both making their first starts as next generation racers. Row 19 has another rookie starting his first race, Ricky Speedster, starting alongside Tim Treadless. Row 20 has Spiky Phillips and Rich Mixon, both making their second start this race. Row 21 has Jonas Carvers, who was lucky to qualify for this race, and Sebastian Silva to his outside. And starting in 43rd is another racer making his very first Piston Cup start, Steam Stanley. He beat all of these cars, among many others, to qualify for this Piston Cup race. Team Sputterstop failed to qualify for this race as Sheldon Shifter was not among the 43 who qualified for this race. This is the first race since 1982 where Sputterstop was not present. I guess having Moray Clutchburn as your racer, taking part in all 36 races in a Piston Cup season every year for over 30 years helped with that statistic. Now, let's get on to the race where Jackson Storm would obviously lead the first 2 laps of the race, but Brad Karslowski would take the lead on lap 2 and lead into lap 16, where Barry DePedal would be out on lap 16 because of an unknown mechanical issue. Jackson Storm would retake the lead on lap 17 and lead for 2 laps before Martin Carx Jr. would take the lead for himself on lap 19 and lead for 5 laps before Billy Carjoy would take the lead for the first time as a next generation racer. But on lap 25, Brad Karslowski would retake the lead. He would lead until lap 70. Meanwhile, on lap 68, Kevin Carvick would be out because of an engine failure. James Garrison would take the lead on lap 70 and lead the field into lap 71, where Gogo Logano would push James Garrison on lap 71 and then take the lead for himself, leading on lap 71. But later that lap, James Garrison would take the lead once again and lead the field into lap 72, where Spiky Phillips would take the lead from him, leading all the way until lap 75, where he'd lose the lead to Vinny Carsfan II, leading the first 2 laps of his career. Martin Carrix Jr. would retake the lead on lap 76 and lead all the way until lap 124, where Jackson Storm would take the lead once again, leading all the way until lap 131, where H.J. Hollis would take the lead off of pit cycles. But after the pit stops were done, Martin Carrix Jr. would retake the lead, leading until lap 153. Jonas Carvers would be out on lap 135 because he spun out. Cruz Ramirez would take the lead on lap 153 and lead for 4 laps before Martin Carrix Jr. would retake the lead until lap 211. How? That's 55 laps! Well, at least Martin Carrix Jr. is sharing the laps. Cruz Ramirez would retake the lead on lap 211 and lead until lap 225, where Jackson Storm takes the lead again. He would actually get pushed by Tim Treadless shortly after taking the lead. This would then lead flipped over to taking the lead, and he'd lead for the next 3 laps before Martin Carrix Jr. would be back in the lead until lap 243, where Brad Keselowski would retake the lead. He would lead all the way until lap 265, where Dan Garcia would be out because of a faulty oil line. Arthur Carstro would take the lead on lap 266 and lead until lap 269, where James Garrison would take the lead once again. He would lead until lap 270, where Kyle Carson would take the lead from him. He would lead until lap 272, where Harvey Rodcap would take the lead from him. He would only lead until lap 275 before Ricky Speedster would take the lead for the very first time, leading for 2 laps. Cruz Ramirez would take the lead on lap 276 and lead until lap 279, where Jackson Storm would take the lead once again. But he would not lead for very long because Chase Racelott would take the lead later in the lap. But before the end of the lap, H.J. Hollis would take the lead and lead the field into lap 280. But roughly halfway through the lap, Gogo Logano would take the lead once again, leading for 5 more laps before Denny Carlin would take the lead for himself on lap 285. But in the very next lap, he would lose the lead to Jackson Storm, who would lead for 8 more laps before Ryan Inside Laney would take the lead from him. He would lead for 2 more laps before Martin Carrix Jr. would take the lead for himself, leading for 14 more laps. Then Cruz Ramirez would retake the lead and lead for 8 more laps before Bad Brad Keselowski would take the lead once again, leading for 3 more laps. But Paul Conrev would take the lead off of pit cycles on lap 321, and Martin Carrix Jr. would take the lead once again after the pit stops were done, leading for 4 more laps before Jackson Storm would take the lead once again, leading until lap 348, where Flipped Over would take the lead from him. He would lead until lap 349, where Martin Carrix Jr. would take the lead once again, leading for 11 more laps. But Spiky Phillips would take the lead on lap 360. But very soon after that, Daryl Speedy would lead his very first lap on lap 460. Same with Steam Stanley, who would lead all the way until lap 362. But H.J. Hollis would retake the lead on lap 362, leading for 6 more laps before Martin Carrix Jr. would retake the lead once again and lead all the way until lap 389, where Bad Brad Keselowski would take the lead once again, leading for 2 more laps before Martin Carrix Jr. would take the lead and lead the final 9 laps of the race. But we're not done yet, as with 1 to go, Gogo Logano would wreck Rowdy Revan Bush, and then they would get into a tire fight, with their pit crews involved too. And Martin Carrix Jr. will win the 2017 Hollywood 400. This is the first time that a former stock car has won a Piston Cup race as a next generation racer. Cruz Ramirez will finish 2nd in her 2nd ever race. Jackson Storm will finish 3rd. Kyle Carson 4th. Chase Racelott 5th. Denny Carlin 6th. Gogo Logano 7th. Brad Keselowski 8th. Ryan Inside Laney 9th. And H.J. Hollis rounding out the top 10. Michael Roeder is the last car to finish on the lead lap this race, finishing 39th. I already went over the top 10, and Jackson Storm finishes 3rd for the first time in his career. And no one from below 10th has appeared yet. Who finished 11th? Well, that's Flipped Over, who was very unfortunate to miss out on getting a top 10. Aaron Clocker, Bubba Wheelhouse, Harvey Rodcap, and Danny Suarez finishing in the top 15, with Spiky Phillips just behind him, and Tim Treadless doing significantly better than last race. Paul Conrev, Pitbull Speed Racer, and Ryan Newcar round out the top 20. JP Drive, although he got 100 points, would have hoped to do better this race. Chris Roman, James Garrison, Billy Carjoy, Rowdy Revin Bush will round out the top 25, with Arthur Carstro unfortunate to miss out on the top 25. Cam Spinner finishes 27th, Herb Kerbler finishes 28th. Vinny Carsfan II finishes 29th in his first ever Piston Cup race, just ahead of Kurt Bushtire in 30th. Nick Schiff and JD McPillar both had underwhelming races. Steam Stanley finishes 33rd in his very first Piston Cup race, with Ricky Speedster finishing 34th in his very first race. Rich Mixon, Ed Trunkin, Sebastian Silva, Daryl Speedy, and Michael Roeder were the last cars to finish on the lead lap this race. And now, here is the top 20 in points, with Cruz Ramirez being in the points lead, with Jackson Storm being in second. H.J. Hollis, Chase Racelaw, and Danny Suarez round out the top 5, with Aaron Clocker, Flipped Over, Ryan Inside Laney, Paul Conrev, and Martin Carrix Jr. This race's winner, rounding out the top 10, Spiky Phillips, Bubba Wheelhouse, Herb Kerbler, who's in 14th, Nick Schiff, and Goga Logano round out the top 15, with Kyle Carson just being outside of it. Tied in points with JD McPillar, and they're all tied on 209 points. Denny Carlin is in 19th, and Chris Roman is 20th in points, 6 points ahead of Lightning McQueen, and 12 points ahead of Bad Brad Karslowski.
Remember to press the notifications button, which goes ring, ring, ring after you press it. And lightning strikes back, and that's as if you subscribed, of course. And thank you for watching this entire video.
I apologize that this video took longer to come out than it should have. I don't have the time that I used to have for this channel, but I will continue making videos on this channel. And the third race of the 2017 Piston Cup season, the video covering that race will be coming out soon enough. Unfortunately, the 2022 Russian invasion of Ukraine is still ongoing over 4 years after the full escalation began. The Ukrainian people just want to live in peace and have freedom, but neither are possible because of this war and the tyrant who started it, Vladimir Putin. We here at the K.A. Bullets Piston Cup YouTube channel stand with Ukraine in their struggle against Vladimir Putin's tyranny and recognize Ukraine's true borders as shown by this map. Slava Ukraini! Heroyam slava! Nechai świecie daruється Ukrainie перемога! Glory to Ukraine! Glory to the heroes! May Ukraine be granted victory very soon. But now, that is not the only war where the consequences of it can be felt all over the world. There's now another one.